helping homebuyers achieve the California dream of acquiring real estate post-COVID. The Federal Reserve has signaled that the road to recovery is going to take time and may keep interest rates low at least until 2022. The California dream of homeownership has been out of reach for many. However, due to COVID, there are new opportunities emerging. Historical low interest rates are increasing purchasing power. Reduced overall demand is causing sellers to be more flexible. Work from home and technology is making it possible to live further from work. And as consumers have adjusted to working from home, they are spending less on consumables and more on their home. For those who must move or those that want to explore homeownership, this is an exciting time to start a new chapter. We need to keep in mind that there are many consumers that have been negatively affected by COVID, and buying a home is just out of the question. Our objective with this presentation is to help those that must or want to put down roots and tailor the home buying process to make clients feel comfortable during the experience. Whether you're a buyer that prefers an experience with 0% physical human contact, a traditional approach, or somewhere in between, we're going to discuss the home buying experience from pre-approval to closing. With me today, I have three great real estate professionals: Justin Jacobson, Realtor CEO of engel&voelkers West Hollywood and real estate coach; Sara Lehmann, Business Development for Glen Escrow; and Stephanie Romero, Business Development Manager of Aeroscopic Environmental. Let's start with Justin. Justin, you're a good friend of mine and real estate partner it's got to be over a decade now. Tell us a little bit. It's been that time, huh?
Absolutely, yeah. Thanks for the invite today. Appreciate it.
My pleasure. My pleasure. So tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do.
So I'm an LA native, one of the rare ones. I've been on the leadership and transaction side of residential and commercial brokerage for many years. More recently, what I'm pretty excited about is I've been coaching realtors nationally about how to get an edge on their competition, how to really grow their business in a meaningful way. And I'm excited to hear everyone's perspective on the call as well.
That's awesome. And, Justin and I, we've done many transactions together, and I've got to say, you're probably one of the best buyer advocates out there. The way that Justin works a deal, he is, the way that he approaches it, he just has a great chemistry with buyers. He pushes where he needs to with sellers and other professionals. But he keeps everything very much in line, keeping us all on a timeline. So it's awesome to work with you. So appreciate
it, man. It's always a dance.
There you go. Always a dance. Always a dance. Sara Lehmann with Glen Escrow. Sara and I, we've worked together many years, and Sara and her escrow officer, Beto Ruiz of Glen Oaks, they too take amazing care of my refinances. There's different types of transactions in home buying and refinances. Sara works with agents, realtors like Justin, on the home buying and home selling process. So Sara, tell us a little bit about what escrow is all about and about your background in Glen Oaks.
Hi, everybody. So thank you for having me here today. So I also am LA native, so I guess that makes two of us. And I grew up in a real estate family. My mom's been a realtor for over 40 years, and I wanted nothing to do with it growing up. And then just like, it just the way it happens, I ended up getting into the real estate industry. So I've been in escrow for about 7 years, and I actually really enjoy it. So escrow is the closing process here in California. So it's a 30-day, usually around 30-day. It could be 45 or 60, but it's a closing process. It's the nuts and bolts. We, transfer the money. We get all the documents signed. It's a little bit different than some other states who do something more traditional, like a table funding, where the buyer and seller will sign in the same day. So we're just a little bit different in that regard. The company I work for, Glen Oaks Escrow, our parent company, Pango Group, has 14 offices all over Southern California. So we go from the beach to the desert, and my job is to interact with the realtors face to face and just be a client advisor as well. So matching, you with the perfect escrow officer for you and your clients. Ron works with my escrow officer, Beto, and Justin works with one of my escrow officers, Carmen. So it's kind of just a matchmaking the personalities, and but I really enjoyed it. It's very client facing, and it's a good hustle out here in Los Angeles.
Yeah, it is, for sure, for sure. Excellent. And we have Stephanie Romero from Aeroscopic Environmental. And I brought Stephanie on, so I know her uncle. And, it was really interesting when, Aeroscopic Environmental, what they do is they help from a, restoration, fire, anytime the home has serious challenges and you need to do a, repair and all of those pieces. But I also noticed they have deep cleaning. And if I'm a home buyer and I'm trying to buy an existing residence, and I go through the process and I work with Sara and she's my escrow officer, and I work with Justin and I'm buying that home. Well, my wife likes to call it, you're inheriting the DNA of the seller. So having a deep cleaning service of an existing home sounds really exciting. So Stephanie, tell us a little bit about yourself and then also Aeroscopic Environmental.
Hi, Ron. Thanks for having me. So I think the goal here is start clean, stay clean, right? Aeroscopic Environmental has been in business since 1958. So between fire, water, mold, and all biohazard cleanup, that's been the specialty. And then ever since the pandemic began, making sure that residential, commercial, and industrial buildings are being taken care of have been the priority here.
Fantastic, fantastic. Well, we'll jump right into it. So we want to start when, if you're helping out buyers, the first step is a pre-approval, right? And the way that pre-approvals were done pre-COVID, all the way back to 2019, we can all remember those days. The pre-approval, it hasn't changed that much. I'd say 99 out of 100 times, I'm meeting with my clients over the phone, through email, through text. It's always been in that virtual world. I hardly ever meet people face to face. So that part hasn't changed. What I would say has changed a bit is a lot of people have questions about the process. So when Justin texts me, call this particular client, they're looking to get pre-approved, I will always offer that opportunity where we have a contact. So we have an initial consultation. We have that initial call. In the past, I've sent a link and said, fill this out, and we can go from there in terms of filling out an actual, going to my website and running their application, doing an initial application, running their credit, all of that. But I find that people are asking questions. So when I'm talking about a pre-approval, we start with the basics. So when Justin sends over a client, I first find out, tell me a little bit more about what you're trying to buy, right? So Justin may give me a little bit of information, but if the client is a first-time home buyer, they may not know exactly what they want. They also may not know what they can afford, right? So it begins that whole process. So I'll kind of get an idea of what that home looks like, condo, or if it's a single-family home, how many rooms, what part of town they're going to look into. And then we go into the financials. So with the financials, I'll ask them just a quick question, about, what do they have to put down? So what is their down payment? What do they have for reserves? So some of these loans, they require reserves. And that just means that they have to have a certain amount of money post closing costs and down payment in the bank. So in the reserves, it's based off of a formula of the principal, interest, taxes, and insurance. And if it's a condo, then the HOA as well. So we may need 3 months of reserves, we may need 2 months of reserves, 6 months of reserves, depending on whatever that particular piece is. And then I'll get just an idea of what's that, we put together that ballpark, right? So we put together that baseline that, so if they say, I'm looking at homes about 600,000, 700,000, that at least has some sort of benchmark that I can use with my initial analysis. So the first step is just gathering that information, and then and then provided that they don't have any questions. Some people have questions about the process. They may have already spoken to a lender. They may just want to get it all on the table, and we talk about their how they are compensated. So for people that are self-employed, I'll ask them, tell me a little bit about your income sources and tell me about how you file your taxes. So people that are self-employed, they can file their taxes either as a sole proprietor, which is where they're filing on their personal taxes under Schedule C, or they may have an S Corp, or they may have a C Corp, or an LLC, or an LLP. Based on their answer, that'll help me determine what that to-do list is going to look like. So I'll ask them about their employment status. If they're W-2 and they're just straight salary, then I will ask them, especially in this time, have they been affected by COVID? And what I'm getting at there is, have their hours been reduced? Have they been furloughed? Or have they been laid off? Or where exactly are they, right? So that's a real important piece. So once we get all those pieces, then I'll ask them for some personal information. So I'll ask them for their full name of all the borrowers on the loan. I'll also ask them for their date of birth, as well as social security number, and current address, email, and phone. From there, I can start my side of the application. And if they don't want to give that information over the phone and they would just rather complete it online, at that point, they certainly can do that. That's completely up to them. But at that point, I'm able to run the credit. And when I look at that credit, I am looking at every single page. I remember when I was, I think, a year into the business, a client had a previous foreclosure. I didn't see it. And all of a sudden we had to do some scrambling towards the end. And that was one of those lessons where you just never want to repeat that again. So I read every single page on the credit report. It doesn't just, glare at you and say, foreclosure or bankruptcy. It actually, you have to read that entire report. So I make sure that before we even get into sending the to-do list, that the credit report looks good. And if there's anything we need to address, we address it right then and there, because that's the most important piece right now. So provided that the client is good on the credit side, I'll put together that to-do list. I will specifically say, okay, I need 2 years of tax returns or whatever I need, all the information. I send that to the client via email, and then they're able to then just drag and drop. So they just upload their income information, their financials from an asset standpoint, so their down payment, and then I'm able to start my process. I created a video. I'll include it after this presentation of how I go about qualifying that client. But let's just assume, and we'll bring Justin into the conversation. Let's assume we now have a buyer. They have, they're buying a property, $600,000, and they've got 20% down for a down payment. And now they're ready to go and buy a condo in Culver City. So Justin, I am now handing them back to you with this buyer. What can they buy in Culver City? And if I have to adjust my numbers, please let me know.
Every market is its own little adventure.
It's true. It's true.
It's interesting that you chose to bring up Culver City, because Culver City has become a new real central business district in Los Angeles. You have Amazon, HBO, Apple, and TikTok taking considerable space. So that's also leading to an excess of 7,000 new jobs for people. So it's become a really interesting area to not only conduct business in, but to understand kind of where it's going in the surrounding areas. So a lot of those surrounding areas that saw incremental increases over recent years are getting major price bumps because of all those employees are working there. We know LA is a city where it's incredibly advantageous to live close to work if you can, to not have to deal with any of the traffic. So for 500 to 600, you're in a 1 to 2 bedroom condo, and depending, and that market is going to shift considerably as these companies take on new employees, and there's less supply to go around for all the new employees who have already purchased. So that will in itself drive the market.
Right. And, so these companies you mentioned, so the Amazons and TikTok and all of these companies, are you seeing that they're being flexible with work from home?
They policies? They are, absolutely. I mean, the professionals that at least I've talked to and what I've been reading. So I think it's a lot of companies are realizing that they can probably get as much or close to the efficiency as they could from personnel working from home, and that personnel doesn't have to feel potentially unsafe or feel like they're they're wasting time, not being able to be in an optimal work environment. So yeah, I've seen there's a big trend to working from home.
So that brings up the question that if you have that flexible work policy and that's going to go into the future, you can go across the hill and maybe get a little bit more bang for your buck in like North Hollywood or Burbank or somewhere else where it would have been a pretty sizable commute going down to Culver City, but because of the work from home, you might be able to get a 2-bedroom condo for that $600,000 price, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, it's very true. I mean, areas that are beautiful, but not that close to freeways that only saw incremental growth are now having a huge popularity spike. So Palos Verdes, for instance, beautiful area, incredible views of the ocean. Now, because of a lot more popularity of work from home, there's a lot more demand in that area. And it's the same with the other areas that you mentioned. So this single-handedly could change the real estate market. So if you're a realtor, it's just important to be prepared and to understand the stats weekly of those different marketplaces so you can prepare your buyer for their purchasing timeline.
Right. And then, so Sarah, with your agents that you work with, are you seeing, I mean, that brings up a really good point, Justin. So, if you look at places like Malibu, you look at Palos Verdes, you could even look as far as north of Santa Barbara. Those are amazing places to be quarantined, right? So if you don't have to go into the office and you can really work from anywhere, are you seeing more demand along the coast or in, I would say luxury areas, which, that were deemed vacation spots in LA?
In Escrow?
Yeah.
I can't speak to that specifically in Escrow, but it has been interesting because we didn't take the tanking that we kind of thought we would. It's been kind of an interesting thing to watch. So I just have some stats for you here because we are, 14 offices wide over all of Southern California. So it just gives you a good idea of how the market has been looking on our end. So our resales since COVID have been on a positive trend ever since. So March and April in LA, OC, and San Diego County they're at their lowest inventory in 3 years, which is very interesting. We are actually outpacing year over year in resale openings, and we are projecting about 1,100 for June. Last year, we were just under 1,100. So it is kind of interesting seeing how it's kind of popping right back up to where it was. Our closing ratio as well. Usually there's always a cancellation percentage, right? So not every deal that opens closes. We usually close about 75% of the deals that we open normally, right? It probably bottomed out around 47% for a couple weeks there when we were kind of in the thick of COVID. Right. And now we're actually, not only have we popped back up, but in the last several weeks, we've been at like 82%, 93%, even 99%, which is very high. And we don't expect it to continue at that rate. But I think a lot of the qualified, we've really weeded out a lot of the people who, maybe were unsure if they really wanted the property. So like, you really have serious buyers coming into the market. So we're just seeing really strong deals coming through. So that's a great sign for the real estate industry.
That's awesome. And then, back to Justin. So, I think one thing that is, so tell me, actually, before I get into that, tell us a little bit about home prices. Have they held their value in LA?
They really have. I mean, when we first went into quarantine and the market kind of stopped, it didn't mean the metrics stopped. We just went into a freeze, but there were still major supply issues, some of the tightest that we've seen in decades. So that didn't change just because we paused for a minute. So now it's like Sarah was saying, it's back to a highly driven market with multiple offers and buyers needing to be incredibly prepared to be competitive and have a chance of getting a property.
Right. And, so one thing that is driving where people are buying is the conforming loan limits, right? So right, like Sarah, you were talking about, right in the thick of it, right in the middle of COVID, jumbo loans were anywhere from 4% and you had to pay a point. I mean, they just, to a luxury buyer, getting a jumbo loan was price prohibitive. And what I know about, luxury buyers or jumbo borrowers is that if they are not being compensated fairly, and what I mean by fairly is along the lines of other particular loan programs, and they don't have to move, then they'll just wait on the sidelines until you have that opportunity where they can get that particular rate in line with what the rest of the market is doing. So it actually, I saw a statistic, it actually said that 83% of the loans that have been going through in the US are now government and Fannie and Freddie. Jumbo has the volume has come down significantly for that very reason. So I'm curious on the pricing, home prices. Are you seeing that pricing has come down for, I would say, $1 million plus homes compared to the homes that are in that conforming and government sector?
Was that for me?
Yeah, it's for you and Sarah. And Stephanie, if you want to join in as well.
I'll just give a couple of just quick points. It's more of the over 2 to 2.5 million that we're seeing a little more stability and not heavy pricing spikes, at least from what I'm seeing. The $1 million purchase price is still moving pretty heavily.
Okay, that's good.
I mean, it's always a right time to buy the right home, and
right.
So that's, I think, it's important. If you were on the sidelines, you're still on the sidelines now. But if you were just trying, there's no way to time the market perfectly. So as long as you're getting these incredible rates, which you were mentioning before, and it fits with your investment objectives and lifestyle, it's a great time to buy.
Right. And if you're right at $1 million, you could put down, if you have the ability, you could put down a little bit more and get a better rate on that conforming side. So a high balance, because it's 765, 600 is the limit for LA and Orange County. So if you put down 250,000, you would be within that threshold. So that could get you in at a conforming rate. And if you're VA, right? So it's pretty wild. I do some VA loans, but this year I have just been getting lots and lots of demand. And a big reason for that is VA, they have actually dropped their loan limits. It used to be there were certain loan limits for VA loans. Well, there was something with Vietnam, but there was some sort of act with Vietnam vets where they put into practice where they said, okay, you're penalizing us for having these particular loan limits for VA. So we're going to go ahead and we're pushing forward that legislature that abolishes those. And now you have vets that are getting VA loans in the 2s and low 3s, and they're looking like jumbos. And that didn't happen before. So I've got a lot of people that they may have bought at the VA where it was a jumbo where they couldn't get that particular loan if they were using VA in the past, and now they're refinancing to a VA loan and they're able to take cash out, and it's really advantageous. And then if you're buying a property, you can just get so much more bang for your buck and put zero down, right? So with no mortgage insurance, that's a huge advantage if you're a vet. So I'm seeing that as a big category. Now that we're in the process, so let's talk about our client. So we're in escrow, and we've opened escrow. So we put down our earnest money deposit. Sarah, what percent do you put down for that?
Well, it depends on what your loan is, right? So if you have a FHA loan, first time home buyer, it could be 3%. It could be 5 or 10%. You could put way more than that down if you like, if you have it. So we'll accept that at the beginning of escrow, and then we'll send out our opening packages. So, and again, this is an escrow state, right?
Right.
So we send out our opening packages. Most of that can be done digitally, which is great in the time that we're in now. So just, how you're taking your vesting, are you taking it as a single person, a married couple? These are just details that need to be sorted out. All of your information that we need to get the escrow started. And then it's the buyer's time to do their due diligence. So inspection periods before contingencies are lifted, if you've so chosen to have contingencies. So once that goes through, the seller is usually completing their own paperwork at the same time. They probably do their notarizations midway through for the grant deed and disbursement of proceeds. So those are the only two documents a seller needs to actually see a notary for. In California, we do not do remote online notary, unfortunately. A lot of other states do those. So if you're in one of those states, that's a great option for the time being. But in California, we do still need to see people. So, and then for the buyers, once everything is sorted out and they finalize their loan, and then we get loan documents, that's when you're going to need to do your notarization. And it's right at the close of escrow. So we have a notary company that we own, but we also work with a lot of outside notaries. So our notary company is called Mosaic Signings. It's actually national. It's kind of like the Uber of notaries, which is kind of cool. You just contact them. You're like, I need someone at 10 a.m. at this place, and they make it happen. So we ask all of our notaries to follow the National Notary Association guidelines, which, keeping hand sanitizer and disinfecting wipes on you at all times, wearing a mask. We highly encourage buyers and sellers to meet with the notary outside if possible. If you have a space, we've had notaries do notarizations on the hood of a car. They're very flexible, and it's always a good idea if you have the contact information of the notary to just confirm what you're comfortable with, because we know that it is a very sensitive thing that people want to feel taken care of and they want to feel safe. And, we are still in a, national pandemic, well, a worldwide pandemic. So
Right.
we're all being as careful as we possibly can. So once the loan docs go through, we fund and then we close, and buyer gets their home and the seller gets their money.
There you go. There you go.
Yeah.
Well, it's, so you said a couple of things, so I wanted to address a couple of those. So, my wife, Karen, and I, we have now lived in Texas coming up on 2 years. But before we made the move to Dallas, I lived in Los Angeles with these fine people for 16 years. So I still hold my license in California, always will. And, the process is a little different. So, in Texas, when we do a closing, the seller actually meets the same day as the buyer, and they have a closing day. So it's this big ceremony. You have the closing day, the seller, they usually come in first, they sign their loan docs, and then they leave. And then you have the buyer, and they'll be in the other room and they're signing their docs, but then they record and fund on the same day. So in California, it's recording it's funding the first day, so funding the loan, and then you record the next day. So what does that recording process look like? Why is there a difference between California and Texas from that standpoint?
So we have a cutoff for once we fund, there's a cutoff in the day. It's like 2 p.m. usually. But what happens is it then goes to the recorder's office, and that goes through the title company. So because it's an escrow and a title company, even if it is still a title and a title company doing the escrow, it goes to the next day to the county recorder's office, and then they record in a certain order. Everything's been done electronically. We've been doing electronic recordings since COVID happened, which is really nice. And then as far as receiving your funds, if you're the seller, that usually happens sometimes same day, but within 24 hours, generally, especially if you have a wire transfer, which makes things much easier.
Got it. That makes sense. And then you mentioned remote online notarization, and I'm kind of partial to the name, ROM. That's really easy to remember. I actually had a client it was a refinance in Texas where they met their notary via webcam. So literally they met with this notary and they showed their driver's license to the screen, and they said, yep, that's your person. They signed an affidavit saying that, yes, I agree to this whole electronic process, and they closed that way. That was awesome. That was so cool. So hopefully California can get around to that. I find that that's pretty helpful. for those that are, vulnerable or, susceptible to COVID, or just, they want to be extra precautious. I know that, with some of the refis that we've done, you actually, the notary came to the house, but they stayed outside, right? So they followed the precautions. They wore the mask, they had the gloves. The buyer or the borrower, they had their own pen, they signed everything, and then they handed the docs back out. So they didn't actually have the notary inside the house. So, that's a remote signing or a mobile notary. But then also, are you actually having people come into Glen Oaks to do the signing, or is it all outside?
So we've been doing all mobile notary since the pandemic started. However, we are going to be allowing people to come into the offices, I think in the next couple weeks, by appointment only. And there will be a lot of guidelines in place to do that. I would still recommend doing mobile notary unless you absolutely, don't want to or cannot for some reason. But it's definitely a good option. I mean, just being able to do it in the comfort of your own home. Maybe you have like an outside patio table, it can be done very easily and with less stress to you, especially as someone leaving the house. That's where it's the scariest, right? It's like
Right,
leaving.
right. Yeah, and
So
I think
have someone come to you, keep their distance. You can do things, you can put all your things out. You can put your ID out. You can walk 6 to 8 feet away, pull your mask down so they can see your face, put it back on, let them do their thing. You do your thing. And you don't have to have close contact at all.
Yeah, and if we ever get back to travel, hopefully we do. In Los Angeles, especially in the entertainment industry, people, they're on set, they're traveling all over. I had a closing one time where they had to sign, did a remote notary. They were in, so he was a stunt performer. He actually had to sign on the set of Joe Dirt 2 in the middle of a swamp in Louisiana. So, but we got it done. We got the closing done. Now I want to bring Stephanie into the conversation. Stephanie, so you shared some slides with me, so I'm going to go ahead and share these. You want me to share the slide or the flyer? Because I want to get into this deep cleaning.
Yeah, so let's go to the slide first.
Slide, okay, we'll go into the slides. All right, and go.
Okay, perfect. So I just wanted to create something small and visible. I think it's important that we all create a safe space for ourselves during this pandemic. And I think when everyone, homeowner, renter, thinks of their home, they think of a safe environment. With that being said, creating that safe space, correct? And so the 5 bullet points, I think, are the most important part of these decontamination services. I would say this is what distinguishes a solid deep clean that anyone could do at their house versus a professional service. So, environmental hygiene, right? You have the most important surfaces to clean, and that's the areas that are contacted regularly. A professional service such as Aeroscopic Environmental, who specializes in cleaning and disinfecting. A trained team, crew, employers that are specialized with working with certain chemicals and methodologies that are required. Protection should include the increased ventilation, disposable suits, gloves, and eye protection. Those are things that, if I didn't work in this industry, I wouldn't know what to get, what to use. And especially since Aeroscopic has been working with biohazard cleanups, trauma scene cleanups, this isn't their first time around any type of risky situation. And then lastly, I think this is the most important part. As we all know, every single day or every single week, there's new news and updates on COVID. And I think the most common means of transmission is through bioaerosols, which are respiratory droplets produced with an infected person when an infected person talks, coughs, or sneezes. With that being said, sometimes, we will have to come in and use dust control measures such as negative pressure ventilation and or HEPA air purification. HEPA filtered vacuums should be used to clean excess dust from porous surfaces that cannot be disinfected. So at times, I mean, just to the naked eye, we won't notice, but as we have our environmental specialists that can even come in and do an indoor air quality testing, they do consulting as well. You really have a solid team coming in and creating this safe environment for a new homeowner or renter. So the next slide is a flyer, which you can also go ahead and save. And this lists the areas that can be cleaned in residential areas and commercial and industrial. Like I said, the most common touched areas, right? So it's windows, you know, even just coming in, if people don't usually take off their shoes before entering their home, all of that gets built up. And Aeroscopic really has the services and products to come in and decontaminate your home.
Awesome. This is awesome. I really appreciate this. So, you know, this opens things up to a whole new level. So, you know, Justin, you know, we've got our home buyer. You know, they've decided, okay, we want to stay in Culver City. We like the action there, and we're good with the 2-bedroom, 1-bath. But you know, the home's in good, you know, the condo's in good shape. But again, there's that DNA thing. So, you know, in the past, they would just, you know, buy the home and then they would just, you know, either hire a service, a maid service, or they would clean it themselves. But being able to go in and do this deep cleaning seems pretty attractive. So, you know, there's a couple of things. So, you know, Justin, if you were listing that condo, and Stephanie, you can help out here. So if you're listing that condo, do you do that deep cleaning when you're, you know, before you prep it for an open house? So, you know, get everything cleaned and sparkling at that open house? Or is it so deep of a cleaning where this is really when you're exchanging hands so that the new buyer comes in and buys it? So Justin, after seeing this, what are your thoughts? Like, is this something, you know, when would you employ this? When would you use Aeroscopic versus Merry Maids or something like that?
I think this is an incredible service. This is really fantastic. I think you can use it multiple ways. Number one, as a buyer, you could write that into an offer that you want a credit at closing for this incredible service. As a seller, it's a great marketing tool to say, we've done this professional deep cleaning at the beginning, right before we're putting it on the market, and then again at the end before we hand the keys to the new buyer. And then we can take kind of those intermediate measures in between with wiping down surfaces and providing face masks and you know, any kind of cleaning agents that will make people feel safe and spacing out showings and all of that. But I think it's an amazing tool, and everybody wants to feel safe right now. So there's really multiple ways you can use it.
Yeah, and Stephanie, are we talking about, you know, so I agree. I think if you're able to build it where you know, so the seller, they say that, you know, we brought in a service, we've done this deep cleaning, and then they hold the open houses, and then right before the home exchanges hands, they will do another deep cleaning and make sure that when you hand over those keys, it's a pristine home. So Stephanie, are we talking about hundreds of dollars? Or are we talking about thousands of dollars or tens of thousands of dollars for the overall service?
Pricing, it's always the favorite question, right?
Well, yeah.
Honestly, I don't have a solid number because of the home and the extent and of the areas where people want this deep cleaning. Some people, you know, don't, not that they don't care, but they just want common areas, handlebars, areas that have been touched. The service can range from, let's say, a condo like a condo, for example, it can range from 200 to 300 possibly. The house, it could be 200, 300 if they only want the front entrance and the back entrance of a home. It really varies. But then if we're starting to use certain air purifiers and machines, then I'm assuming that you're now doing a deeper clean because of these porous areas. So ballpark, it can range from 200 to 1,000 possibly, depending on how deep you want this cleaning service.
Yeah, so I mean, adding that in the contract, Justin, I mean, that's kind of what you're paying for appraisals and home inspections, right? So it's not like it's so far out of the reach, but just to know that it's that you're thinking about that, I mean, that gives you a leg up in terms of competition, right?
Absolutely. With those prices, it definitely should not be a deal breaker.
Mm-hmm.
And keep in mind, seller and a buyer, they're going to transact usually for at least 30 days. So to be in business with someone where there's that common respect and additional care from the seller side to the buyer is just going to make for a much smoother ride during the whole rest of the transaction. So I think, once again, this is an incredible service and it's not price prohibitive at all. And everyone can chip in if need be to make sure that it happens if it needs to happen during more than one time during the transaction.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm thinking back to when Karen and I, when we first got married, we lived in Westwood, and to me, I'm a guy. I'm like, yes, this place is awesome, everything's great. But I heard Karen talk about the previous owner's DNA for about 2 years, right? It's just one of those things. It's a recurring conversation. So as a husband, that's a pretty cool gift to give to your wife on the new home by saying, hey, we brought in this deep cleaning expert with Aeroscopic Environmental, and they went in and did this deep cleaning and got rid of all those things. So I mean, that's massive. I think that's a real opportunity. Sarah, do you have any thoughts about that whole process of getting the home ready from a listing standpoint, and then also exchanging keys? Are you finding that any of your clients or agents that have shared with you that people are cleanliness is a big piece?
I mean, I'm sure that it is. I haven't heard it discussed much, but I'm actually really excited to now have met you, Stephanie, because I think this is a great thing that a listing agent could provide to their sellers, that a buyer's agent could provide to their buyers, just to give peace of mind. I think it's a great thing for everyone to have in their back pocket as just an option. And I would be surprised if everybody wasn't doing this going forward. It's a great service.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, within those price points, I think it just makes a ton of sense. And that's just another, arrow in your quiver. And also it reduces those buyer objections, where you have a buyer, Justin, where, they may be susceptible to COVID, and they're like, I don't know if I want to, go into that home because there could be like a little streak of mold or, something where it just turns them off completely. But if you bring in a deep cleaning service that can that's certified, and Stephanie, let's talk about that. So what certifications do you say that you kill COVID? Like what specifically do you say when it comes to these things?
No, I mean,
right.
No one really kills COVID.
Right.
So here's what's going on. We come in, we do the deep clean, we do the decontamination. In that moment, the chemicals and the cleaning materials that are used, our client will get a copy of the safety data sheet. It'll list the chemicals that are approved by the EPA, and let me see if I have it right here. So the California Department of Public Health, we follow all of their regulations, as well as the medical waste management. We have been, let me see, give me 1 second. Let me pull this up for you. This is
you're good.
That I actually wanted to add to the slide. So here we go. Perfect. So as a biohazard cleanup special services, we are registered with the California Department Health Center. So any new updates, any new rules and regulations, we're constantly being updated. So if any of those forms need to be presented to any agent, we can provide those as well. And even as the homeowner or renter want to continue our services, we can keep updating them with new updates and new chemicals that are coming out. So no, we don't necessarily kill COVID, but with the listed chemicals, those are the decontamination tools that are used to clear COVID in that moment.
Right. And because of your specialty in biohazard and all of these things, you're already following all of those precautions, right? So it's not like you're a maid service where, you know, they go in and they clean and it's, they've heard about, we should follow these particular guidelines when it comes to COVID. You've already been dealing with viruses and, you know, all the icky things in the house, right?
Exactly. And I personally, I mean, I'm in business development, so I personally have never really entered the facility. But since Aeroscopic has been around for so long, we have so much information. And, I think for presentations, it's just a lot of content to just want to post onto a PowerPoint and just read all the listed information. But we really have a lot of information that we can share regarding the biological decontamination services. And unfortunately, since this is the first time COVID has really been presented here in LA, I think we have an upper hand because we have experienced biohazard cleanups, and just walking into a facility that is not necessarily the safest. So we come in and we make sure that that it stays clean, correct? So it starts
Exactly.
clean, it's clean.
Yeah, exactly. And, you know, what I'll do here is I'm going to reshare everybody's contact information here. So, you know, just one by one, how can folks get in touch with everybody? So Justin, what's the best way to reach you?
Best way to reach me is my mobile number, text, or picking up the phone old fashioned, or shooting me an email. What's highlighted in blue is the easiest way.
Awesome. Sarah?
Same for me. Yeah. Call, text, or email. I'm pretty much available 7 days a week. So.
Awesome. And then Stephanie, do people just go to the website and call the main number?
I would recommend checking out our website. And once you see, I mean, we have a large list of information and tabs. Once you've seen what exactly, which service you need, you can give us a call and someone will assist you immediately. We do have emergency services provided 24/7. So we're just really one call away.
Awesome. Fantastic. And I'm Ron Bruno with Guaranteed Rate. I'm licensed in California and in Texas, 558-706, California and Texas. Well, guys, I'm a little homesick. I miss you guys. Hope you're doing well in Cali, but really appreciate your time. I think this was a great conversation. We were able to think of things a little differently, and hopefully folks, they get some good value out of how to buy homes in California and enjoy that California dream. So thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Thanks.
See you later.